Hello, everyone. This is Eric Diaz. This is Marketing 110. I want to thank everybody for joining today. I'm really happy today. I have a good friend of mine that was able to join our class today. And so I want you guys all to meet Curtis Midkiff. Curtis, thanks for being part of the class. So you guys know Curtis. So during his career, he has held diverse marketing, adversarial, and senior level digital and social leadership roles, defining social media strategy, communication, and marketing solutions for 4 global organizations, including a number of them you guys would probably recognize, which is Southwest Airlines, Kroger, Weber Grills, and currently with 23andMe. His efforts have resulted in enhanced revenue, market share growth, and expanded brand awareness. Curtis has worked closely with senior corporate leadership and stakeholders across these organizations to optimize online delivery and execute targeted social influencer strategies. As a results-driven leader, Curtis leverages his business acumen, entrepreneurial spirit, and subject matter expertise to initiate effective practices and successfully employ business intelligence to forecast trends and identify opportunities for new business development. He inspires each member of his team to pursue a passion for excellence, implement best practices, and apply the highest level of integrity across all business dealings. So Curtis, once again, thank you very much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Eric. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, of course. So let's just hop right into it. So Curtis, if you would, tell us tell us about what you're up to right now. I know you're with 23andMe. If you would just, and I know it's been recent, but if you could just tell us a bit about what your day-to-day is like.
Yeah, I've been at 23andMe now. This is my 3rd week. So like right now, my days are really about meeting with folks to learn the business, learn where the organization is going. Like they have some very ambitious plans for the future. And so I'm really excited about that. It's getting to know my team member and really like looking at our where we stand and where we'd like to be. I'm learning, kind of just putting together in the early stages of really putting together our vision for this upcoming fiscal year, and then ultimately building kind of a 3-year roadmap to put my plan in action.
Got you. How did tell me a little bit more about your career path? So I know back when we met, you were with Southwest Airlines, but if you would maybe take us even back further, if you would, like tell us like how you first got into marketing and all of that.
Yeah, man. It's interesting. Like I've always loved marketing, but my career has really had, like, I would say I'm in the 3rd act of my career. So like fresh out of college, I worked at a political action committee startup because like I was going to be in politics and law and all that kind of stuff. And so I worked at an organization for several years, which really kind of set a foundation of marketing experience. I don't want to age myself here on this call, but that when marketing was a little bit different, when we did like direct mail and, but always have tried to be at the forefront of what's next. So what was next then was like moving from direct mail to email marketing to website development and those kind of things. And then the 2nd act of my career, I was an entrepreneur for 5 years. I had a small marketing agency. And even then we were focusing on like emerging ways to digitally help people market. We were doing live streaming back when like it was still very much so early adoption of live streaming for radio and events, and then started to see things happen. And then one of the things that happened was, and like a big moment for me with social media was when President Obama was first elected. My team was doing a lot of events, just generally nonpartisan events in DC, because in DC, like politics is like a sport. People watch debates and like have fun and all that kind of stuff. So we had created like a lot of avenues for different people to get together. No matter what political party you were in, you could come to our parties and watch the debate and have a good time. So when he won, my team, my business partner and I realized there was going to be millions of people coming to DC and they weren't going to know like how to get around. So this is 2009. So we started a Facebook group that, long story short, grew to about 25,000, which at that time was big. And so got some pickup from Wall Street Journal and others and everything like that. And that started to really let me see like this is where things were going. Like, because we were like Airbnb before Airbnb. Like people were putting like, I have a house, I'm gonna leave, do you need a house to stay? Like people were selling tickets on our site. Like we had like all stuff going on. We had like Shopify before Shopify. We were doing all of it. And so my big shift to the 3rd act, which has been being a social media marketing executive for the past 12 years was like the agency life was just tough. Like I had an agency, and I remember I met my wife, I was dating at the time. Like I met her, and it was like one of the big snowstorms in DC. We're walking through the snow to try to get to the store. And like my clients are still calling because they're all over the place. They're like, as long as you get to a computer, you can help me with my marketing issue. So that's when I decided I wanted to go in-house, but I didn't want to, I wanted to do something that combined like my marketing experience, like traditional marketing experience where I'd written ads and copy and all that kind of stuff, with something that still made me feel like an entrepreneur. So that's where social media came aboard. And so like I've been in social media now like 6 organizations, because I started with the Society for Human Resource Management, which was a big trade association of HR professionals. Began to get them going on social, then moved to the American Red Cross, which was a whole different experience in terms of crisis management, different things like that. Then went to Southwest, Kroger, Weber, and now 23andMe. But this is the third act, kind of this social media executive for brands. So it's been a fun career. Like I can't say that I charted it out this way, but I'm happy with how it turned out.
What tell us something about campaign, any big wins, or like maybe what's been a big or big challenges? Any good stories of like as far as what's been a big challenge that you've had to overcome in your career?
I think the biggest challenge, especially being in social media marketing, was, and it's not as much of a challenge now because I think that businesses have realized that it is just something that you can't do without.
Mm-hmm.
So they're making the investment in resources. When I first started, like, it was a thing to be like a social media manager, director, et cetera, because like most brands had their social media run by an intern.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, who knows how to tweet? Okay, this intern, they can have all the passwords, Facebook, everything. And there wasn't much of an investment because people were like, oh, it's free, we don't understand it. So my challenge has always been to align what we can do with the strategy so that people who were not as averse in social could understand. So like I could walk into a CEO's office, they're not going to care like, did I post on 3 times on Instagram? Did I do a reel versus a story versus this? What they're going to care about is, oh, so you can help us amplify our message to our target audiences this way. And these are the results you're getting. Okay, we can make an investment in that. And so every win that I've had has been traced back to really getting people to have that aha moment about social, whether it was the influencer program I started at Southwest Airlines, which kind of ushered in a new era of kind of long-term relationships with influencers as opposed to one-offs. Whether it was getting an HR association's conference to organically trend globally on Twitter by just encouraging the conference organizer to allow people to tweet and not be nervous about their ringers going off.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think it's just been, those have been the wins of just being able to put what we're doing into a framework that a leader could see impacts the bottom line.
Perfect. I want to ask a couple student questions that came in. So Mirka from the class, he sent a question, says, what type of skills does someone need to work in social media strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I think that one of the things that's great about where this function is like there's some clear lanes that you can, clear lanes of specialty. So I think of it as like content, community, and commerce, right? So you can be good at, and I'll get to the strategy roles in a minute, but there are roles within content. So like if you're a good content designer or a creative person or somebody who you may not do the creative, but you understand creative vision, or you have a mind for that, you can be in the content lane. There's tons of jobs at all levels of content. Community, if you're somebody who likes to engage with folks on social, then there are tons of careers in that, whether it's social care or like community manager or experiential, like all of these ways. If you want to engage with the community, the commercial side of it is if you're really into the numbers of it, right? So you can be in analytics, you can be a social analyst where you basically take a look at social conversations and you provide insights to the organization and say, hey, this is how they're talking about your product. Or you can be in paid media where you actually like buy media with the various platforms. Or you could actually, now there's social commerce is a new thing where like they're doing live streams of commerce and how you sell. So for a strategy role, I think the biggest thing you need to have is just, if you're going to be on the brand side, you need to be able to be well-versed in the business or brand that you're working for and understand what that business's values are, what is the bottom line for that business, and what is basically keeping your leaders up at night. So like when I was at Weber, the big thing was like, how can we connect with new audiences, with younger audiences? So I had to keep that in mind as I'm planning strategies. Like that's how I'm looking at platforms. So that's how I'm bringing them. You know, we end up doing a very successful TikTok pilot, and it's because I was able to show that, hey, the demographics match where you're trying to go. But it's really being well versed and then being able to communicate that to both sides. So you'll typically have a team that you need to communicate. You need to communicate what you know to be true about the organization's long-term plan, strategy, priorities, you know, objectives, key results, all those cool things. You have to be able to communicate that effectively to your team. And then you have to actually be able to communicate with those outside of your team, stakeholders and others, to communicate to them in the manner they understand. So I think those are the key things. And then some of the tactical things you want to know, you want to be a good presenter. You know, it's very good that you're able to present, have an executive presence where, you know, you can speak to anybody, you can answer questions kind of in this format. You're a good listener. And like I said, you really know how to, the last thing that's very important is like, you know how to create goals and results. So like, you know how to create those goals that are measurable, you know, that people can like buy into, whether it's, hey, I want to increase our followers by 40%. Okay, great. Or, hey, I want to increase our engagement. So people can get behind you and understand what you're trying to do.
Gotcha. Perfect. Okay. What are, you know, some of the brands that you mentioned, really, really well-known brands. And it made sense how you explained like the 3 acts of your career and you're in the 3rd act. What are some of the things that you think have made you stand out to some of these big brands?
I think it's because I have a philosophy that I just, that I own. And this idea of culture, community, and commerce is something that can apply to any brand. So when I go into an interview, whether it's, you know, now I work for a biotech company. I started out with an HR trade association. I've worked in aviation, grocery retail, CPGs. Those 3 buckets, or whatever your philosophy is, you know, whatever your philosophy is, that can translate. So it's kind of like being, you know, I love music. You know that, Eric. I love music, right? So it's like being a DJ, right? So like, if you're a good DJ and you know like music and you're like, I know the techniques, like I know how to blend one song with the other, like I know how to keep a crowd engaged, like I know how to read an audience and how to change up, then you could DJ in any venue. And so I feel like I'm a brand DJ, right? So what I do is I go in and I realize like, what do I need to do for this brand to move their crowd? So I don't change up how I spin or whatever. I may change the music selection or I may change the channels that I use. But the idea that my focus, like when you book me or when you hire me, I'm culture, I'm commerce, I'm commerce, content, and community. And culture too, I forgot. That's the 4th C, culture. You know, that's what you're going to get. And so that's been able to help me go to different brands and really have that same philosophy, but then adapt it to the immediate needs of that brand.
That's great. Okay. All right. Very good. I'm going to ask Kevin, just send in a question. I'm going to ask Kevin, give me in just a second. I'll have you ask your question. Michael, if you got any questions, let me know, and we'll get you on there as well. Let me ask this question. Oh, yeah. Valeria sent a real good question. It's about college and like the benefit of going to college. And she said, in your opinion, is education necessary when trying to be a social media marketer?
I think so. Like, I don't think you have, here's what I mean though. I don't think you have to go to college and like major. There's not really a lot of majors in like social marketing. But what I do think can help is everything that the education experience can provide. So as a marketer, because you want to be a digital marketer that can do social, right? As a marketer, what you benefit from is you can learn some theory. You can get theory in the classroom, okay? Then you can network. So the college experience allows you to network because, you know, your college probably has a network of people that are at the companies or doing marketing, so you can network. You can also get some real life experience in that educational framework. So like you can intern either in, you know, externally with the company or intern at the college, right? So I think that that's where the education piece plays a role. Because what you can do is it puts you in an environment where there's opportunities for you to like move your career ahead over a 4-year period, right? And then I will say this, even once you get out of college, whether you go for your master's or whatever, always take advantage of learning opportunities, continuous learning opportunities, like whether it's on LinkedIn or Coursera or others, where like you never get to a point where, especially when you want to be a social marketer, you're always learning. You're always learning. Like I knew nothing about analytics. I was like, I got to learn more about analytics, you know, or I got to learn more. I got to learn more about design, even if I'm not going to design. So I think it's necessary in the sense of like, it can round you out. And it's all about how you just leverage that experience in unique ways.
Great. Valeria asked a question of you as well. So she said, with your career spanning more than 20 years, what are some of the things that you've needed to adjust to the quickest?
You know, the biggest thing is adjusting to I think that I had to really do a couple of things to advance in social, particularly at this phase of my career. I think that I had to really step away from the day-to-day involvement in like every post in favor of knowing that my role as a leader is to make it easy for my team to create, like to give them the freedom and not really impose my ideas all the time. So I had to really focus on being a strategic leader and doing the things like, hey, I need to meet with the head of marketing because I need to make the case for our budget, because our budget will empower my team to go ahead and build that influencer program they've been thinking about. So just really like making sure my involvement is constructive and giving my teams the freedom to learn, even if they have to make mistakes, like giving them the freedom to learn and being there for them. I think the other thing I had to pivot to is just continue to pivot with the platforms. One of the things that I can tell you guys is like, I've been in this long enough where the platforms seem new, but they're not. So like TikTok is like Vine 2.0. You know what I mean? You know, but I it's helped me begin to think in buckets as opposed to platforms. So like I look at trends, short form video is a trend. So like the trend, it's always been something people liked, but then TikTok moved that trend forward. So as you see, all the other platforms fell in line. It's like Instagram came out with Reels and YouTube came out with Shorts. So like as you're thinking as a strategic marketer, you're like, okay, I need to figure out a short form video strategy that can play across these platforms. So just adapting to the big trends and the big shifts. The big thing I'm thinking about now is like, okay, I got this Oculus now. Like, okay, what is the metaverse going to look like to me as a social marketer? Like, how can I start thinking about that now? Like, I don't know enough about it yet, but it's like, those are the things that I adjust to. And then like, that's the biggest shifts I had to make to really like adjust my game plan to just how, you know, it's like a, you know, I'm still in NCAA tournament mode. So it's kind of like, it's kind of like, you look at these coaches, like Coach K coached for like 40 years, right? It's like, you have to adjust, like the players are different in every era. You know what I mean? So like they're faster, they stay 1 year, they used to stay 4 years. Like those are the things like you kind of like, you got to keep being relevant to people and keep being relevant. So that's kind of like been my adjustment over these past 20 years.
I like that. Yeah, great analogy. Stepping back to, you mentioned not necessarily being involved with every post anymore, like, kind of thinking bigger,
Mhm.
having trust in your team. Back when you did, or other roles that you've had where you were more like on the front lines,
Mhm.
what is that like? Like, Michelle asked this question. She says, what is something that you would look into before posting any content? What's the most important thing to you before posting?
Oh man, like the most important thing to me is like that I have a clear reason for posting this. And that's very tempting because like depending on the brand you work in, like everybody wants to have that win. Like, like I know a few years ago it was like the Arby's Pharrell hat win. And then a couple years, then it's like the Wendy's roast, and it's like this. Like everybody wants, like I want to be an ad week, right? Like I want a social director, like I want, but at the same time, like I have to evaluate: is it relevant to my brand? I mean, to my organization's brand, like or are we just getting involved to get involved? So like I think as I've gotten further in my career, like I used to be very tempted, like every trend. Like it used to be find a way to trend because like I just was always thinking like this trend is never going to come around again, as opposed to being like, no, let's develop a tone, let's develop a conversational style, let's develop something people get used to, and let's let's know that unless we're putting paid behind our social, that if we're posting over 30 days, like we're going to probably win 10 out of the 30 days. Like win meaning like we're going to create a piece of content that organically hits at the right time, that inspires the type of thing that we want to do, right? The other 20 days, we're going to try different things. And it may be that people didn't see us that day. But then that's what I've learned. I've learned like to not be emotionally attached to the performance of them, because like I've worked on campaigns and content where I put a lot of energy into it and we posted and it fell flat. Then I've worked on stuff where I did a text only post and it went crazy. So it's just like those are the things I think about. Like, is it relevant to the brand? Does it align with our strategy? Is it going to be engaging? Does it have a clear call to action? Those kind of things.
Very good. Another question, and you can answer this from your current perspective, or if you're on the front lines actually creating content.
Mhm.
But how do you stay up to date with the ever changing digital or online world?
That's where I just been blessed, man. I've been blessed to have really great teams. And I think by me focusing on being their strategic leader and like building a team chemistry and a culture where like everybody feels equal on my teams to come up with ideas, they help me stay focused. They help me know, I got so many fun examples of like my Weber team or Kroger team or Southwest team where like I come with an idea that I'm like, oh my goodness, this is great. And they're like, no, people are not talking about that anymore. And I empower my teams to really like, I check in with them like, hey, what's moving? Like
Hmm.
what's moving on Twitter? Like what's moving on Instagram? Like what's moving on TikTok? Like what do you all see? And that's how I stay up to date, quite honestly, like because it's hard to stay up to date, like and still lead the strategy. Agencies help too. Agencies help me, sometimes with that. But I think it's just really like hiring the right teams and really like making, just really tapping into them and letting them know that that's a great value they bring to the organization by just keeping us updated on like what's happening, like and that really helps me out a lot.
Yeah, no, very good. Michael, I know you've been on. I just wanted to make sure if you've got any questions, let me know, and I'll have you on right now if you'd like, or in a few minutes.
Yeah, quick question. So Curtis, how much time would you, so I'm really not, this is all new for me.
Okay.
Staying up to date, how, how much time do you spend on social media? So I know there's other different platforms, but do you spend a certain amount of time each day that like just try to stay with the trends, or is it just
My wife would say I spend entirely too much time on it because like anytime I got a break, I'm looking at something. I make a difference between here's my strategy for this. I really spend the most time on like Instagram, just because I feel like it has like the different types of content. Um, I try to like the irony is like I don't do a set amount of time because like I still try to have a leisure experience with social. So like the people that I follow or like some of the content that I follow is purposeful because it's like has nothing to do with my job. Like, I don't, I'm probably gonna have to follow more like genetics folks and stuff like that. And I will do that. But like I follow like content creators that create like content that makes me laugh, entertains me. And within that, that's how I learn what's happening new, right? Because like the content is engaging to me, but then you kind of see because like content creators take advantage of the new features quicker than brands. So like what I recommend to people is like if you have an interest that's outside of your professional interest. So like if you like cooking, go follow a bunch of like follow the hashtags on TikTok or pick a couple platforms that you want to learn more about. Follow cooking and like on those platforms and just watch fun content. And then what you'll see is like, oh man, like you'll start seeing trends. You'll start seeing like how they present the content. So you're like, oh, they're doing reels. Okay.
Okay.
I see that because they get more interaction. On TikTok, it's 1 minute. So they're doing this. And then so you're having fun watching it, but you're also learning like what's new there. Because it's hard to like sit down and be like, okay, I'm gonna sit here for an hour and I'm gonna go through Instagram because there's not like a guide to that. But that's what I'm saying. Like, just find an interest that you have that's like the opposite of what you do for a living. Follow some folks on the platforms. Follow a few folks that consistently put out content, and that will help you learn the trends.
On the trends. Okay, perfect. Yeah, that
Yep.
makes sense. Definitely. Thank you.
Yep.
And I got Kevin had to drop, but he submitted a question. One of his questions was, what are some of the biggest common challenges that you find working in social media? It could be internally or externally as far as like communicating with your audience.
Two challenges, one internal, one external. The internal challenge a lot of times is getting the buy-in. It takes a little longer for an internal team sometimes to get buy-in as opposed to an agency. And here's why. I think that, sometimes it's easier for like groundbreaking ideas sometimes to come in from the outside because like an agency's thinking unfettered by like budgets and like internal challenges and different things. So they're just coming with like the greatest idea ever. And then you just kind of wind that back. Internally, sometimes that's hard because, you got to convince different people for the resources. I've been successful in that regard though. Like I did a film at Kroger around Black college homecomings. And what I was able to do, it was something we hadn't done before. So it took a little bit of time to get approval. But what I was able to do is kind of like show like, hey, this is going to really help us because like, I understand that the organization is rebranding around fresh food and around, fresh for everyone. And that was like the brand mantra. So I was like, what if I build this film around like the intersection of food and culture? And so for the food, I'm going to feature fresh food. I'm going to feature like fresh, food being prepared, but I'm also going to talk about the culture. So it works. So like, it just takes a little longer sometimes. You got to really sell it. And that's why like the soft skills of relationships are important, because like you got to have relationships. So that way you got people that can sit in a meeting and support it because you've sat with them before the meeting and said, look, I'm coming with this like really different idea. Another example of that was like when I was at Kroger, we created a bot that when you open your refrigerator and you took a picture of the bot and you tweeted it to our chef bot, it would send you recipes. And like, that was a tough idea to get through initially because it was just going to be social only.
Mm.
So I told the agency, I said, let's wait on this. Because the agency's like, man, let's try this. I said, no, because like the resources to build this, if we're just doing it for like a short-term campaign, it's going to be hard for me to sell this because it's a big investment for like a seasonal campaign. I said, just hold tight. I like the idea. And we reintroduced the idea at a time when, right after, right in the heart of COVID, the organization marketing team was like, we want to execute some big ideas. So we have resources for a big idea. So who has a big idea? So I went back to the agency. I was like, now's the time. Let's go with this chef bot. And you could type it in today. Like it got like 75 media entries. It won like 6 awards. But that was my biggest challenge. External challenges, I think, is that as a brand, you're competing for the attention of people, and you're competing against like influencers. You're competing against just people coming to social to talk to their friends. Like, so like, the biggest challenge is like, how do you as a brand like still find a way to be in the space where people like care about what you say, where they're not like, because you have to really humble yourself, because nobody really wakes up on a day-to-day basis. Like, we're not a media company, right? So we're not like I follow the Shade Room and like some other websites. It's like, they're not coming to get like the daily, like TMZ, like they're not coming to get the daily gossip from us. Like, they're not like refreshing their screen to be like, what are we going to say about, the royal family or whatever. It's what they're trying to, so as a brand, you got to like humble yourself to be like, okay, people are not really tuning in for me, but if I find a way to tap into what they like, they might tune in a bit more. So that's the ongoing challenge. Like, how do you as a brand, like, how do you compete for the interest of people on social channels when they're there for like other things?
That's a great answer. Appreciate that. Okay, and then I just have a few final questions before we wrap up about just like things that students can do to set themselves apart. So a lot of the class is will be soon, if not already, looking for their first jobs. And in the marketing world, they may be looking at digital marketing. They may be looking at small companies, big companies. So any kind of guidance, I guess, for them is really helpful here. So one of the questions that I have here is, with the knowledge you have now, would you have taken the same steps to land where you are now?
It's interesting. When I thought about this question, like, I was tempted to be like, yeah, I probably would have, but I'll be honest with you. Like, I think my journey has been a lot like the game of Jenga. And so like when you're the thing about Jenga is like, it's perfectly imperfect, right? So like when you're building up the Jenga tower and you're kind of setting up your career, like, you don't kind of think about it. You kind of be like, when you first get to that, right? You don't kind of think about it. And that's kind of how my career's been. Like, I wouldn't change anything about it. I've had ups and downs, but I wouldn't change anything about it, because like, I think if I pull out that Jenga piece from 10 years ago, maybe the whole thing comes down. You know what I mean? So it's like, when you've played Jenga for a long time, you sit back and you're like, oh my goodness, like it's stable, like it looks good, like it's teetering a little bit, but it's like, oh man, I've made these moves. Now, with that being said, I think the only thing that I would probably have done differently if I knew I was going to go into marketing is I would have just leveraged my college experience a little differently. Like, I think I would have done more on campus in the marketing space. I probably would have sought out more mentors. I think today's student professional needs to get that LinkedIn page real tight, and leverage LinkedIn as like this great Rolodex or database of whoever you want to talk to. I think those are things. And I think that's it. I mean, for me personally, at this stage of my career, like I said, it's been that Jenga piece. And I'm like, I think about mistakes I made along the way, like even with my company and different things like that, like when I had my company. But I just feel like those mistakes as an entrepreneur made me really good as being when I went into companies and I was like, I had limited resources and I was like, oh, I made that mistake when I was an entrepreneur. Like, I know not to make that mistake again, so yeah.
Following up with that question, another one I have is similar, and this could be business or life in general, but what are some life lessons you've learned throughout your journey that have helped you to get where you are?
I think it's important. Soft skills are important. I think that building and maintaining relationships with people has helped me a ton. I mean, I've known you for we're talking about 6 years,
Hmm.
and we met at a conference. And then over these 6 years, we've been able to work together. You've come and spoke at events for me. I'm here today. Like your company's worked with me, has really helped me learn a lot. So it's like relationships are so important. And like just taking the time and just cultivating those relationships and seeking out those relationships when you're early in your career, like seeking out those relationships because people love to share. Like I'm at a point in my career where like I love to share in these kind of environments because, it can help someone else. And like just if I leave this earth with this knowledge and don't share it, like it's not helping anybody. So I think just honing your soft skills, like you can be really good at something, you be really good at your work, but if you don't build relationships with people, especially at jobs, like if you don't take the time to like really build relationships with your peers, with your leaders, with their leaders, it's gonna be a little tougher for you. But I think soft skills are like the thing that people just don't think about as much.
No, that's great. Okay. Now I just wanted to wrap it up. One last question. If you could, as I mentioned, a lot of students in the class are thinking about their careers. Any final tips for these college students as they figure out their future?
Yeah, I think leverage the resources you have while you're in school right now. Um, and don't get caught up in like, oh, I'll be starting out here. Like what brands are looking for in this particular space, digital marketing space, is just experience. So like that experience could be that while you're in school, like you developed a podcast. You developed a podcast and like you watched it grow and you promoted it and you built it. Like that is relevant experience that when you walk into an interview, that's big. That helps you stand out from the other people. Or like, you know, you might be an influencer. What you might have done is like you've invested in your own personal social brand to the point where like you got a blog, you got like a really active IG, you got active TikTok, and like it all is cohesive. Like that's real life experience that brands are looking for. So I think, leveraging the time now to learn, and to network, to look for mentors, um, and to spend time honing your craft. Like spend time like at the things you're good at, like find a lane of the things you're good at and build that. And then also, diversify that with things that, they may not come as second nature, but they're good to have in your portfolio. Um, yeah. And I think leverage the resources that these schools have, leverage the resources or leverage the online resources that you have. And I think that's going to really help you stand out. Particularly in a world where, um, as a sidebar, diverse representation is needed in these companies as well. So like understand that too, as diverse professionals, either diverse by age, gender, ethnicity, all of those different things, those are all things that brands are looking for as well that can be brought to the table. So yeah, and listen to guys like Eric, really smart person I look up to for what he's been able to build, as much needed in this industry, and how he's been able to grow his company and grow his brand. Like I think listening to folks like him and picking his brain is important as well.
Curtis, I really appreciate everything you said today and taking the time to be with the class. So no, thank you so much. I think we all learned a lot, and I look forward to sharing this video with everybody. But yeah, thank you guys. Thanks everyone that submitted questions. Thank you, you guys all. Have a great week. Thank you, my friend. Hope go
right.
meet with your family. I know they're waiting for you.
All right. Have a good day. All right.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Curtis. Have a good day.
All right, bye.
Thanks, Eric.
Bye. Thanks.